Выполнить молнию.
A major strike has reportedly hit a large logistics facility in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. Initial reports began circulating on August 8th, and one detail immediately stood out. The target was described as one of the largest logistics complexes in the region. But there is one important word in that initial report: preliminary. In other words, the information was still developing. The identity of the facility had not yet been fully confirmed. Neither had the weapon used in the attack. What we can say at this stage is simple. A large logistics facility was reportedly targeted. Footage circulating online appears to show a major fire and extensive damage at the site. But there is an important distinction we need to make. A massive explosion does not automatically mean Iskander-M. Not long after the reports emerged, speculation began to focus on one particular Russian missile system: Iskander-M. The Iskander-M is a Russian short-range ballistic missile system. It is designed to strike high-value targets with a powerful warhead and very little warning time. Russia has used the system repeatedly throughout the war, but there is a major difference between saying Iskander-M may have been used in this strike and saying Iskander-M definitely hit this logistics complex. The second claim requires evidence, and so far, that evidence has not been publicly established. So for now, we have a major reported strike, a large logistics target, and one unanswered question. What weapon was actually used? And why would a facility like this matter so much? That brings us to the bigger picture. Modern warfare is not decided only by what happens on the front line. There is another battle taking place far behind it: warehouses, distribution centers, rail links, transport hubs, fuel facilities, and the networks connecting them all. Without logistics, frontline forces cannot operate for very long. Equipment has to move, ammunition has to move, spare parts have to move, food and other supplies have to move. That is why major logistics facilities can have significant strategic value. Dnipropetrovsk itself is one of Ukraine's important industrial and transport regions. Dnipro is a major urban and industrial center. The wider region also has important transport links towards different sectors in eastern and southern Ukraine. So if a major distribution facility suffers serious damage, the effects could potentially go beyond a single building. But we also need to be careful here. A large warehouse does not automatically mean it is a military target. Some facilities may be entirely commercial. Others may have mixed functions. And without reliable evidence about the specific facility hit on August 8th, we cannot simply describe it as a military logistics hub. That is why identifying the target is just as important as identifying the missile. And this incident does not stand alone. Over recent months, several large warehouses and logistics facilities in Ukraine have also been reported damaged by Russian strikes. One notable example was the Amtel logistics complex in the Kiev region. The facility suffered heavy damage during a strike in July. Reports concerning the Winetime warehouse also highlighted the vulnerability of large storage facilities during the war. At the same time, Ukraine has also targeted logistics facilities and commercial infrastructure inside Russia. So this is not simply about one strike. There is a broader pattern. Logistics are increasingly becoming part of the battlefield. And this is where the possible use of Iskander-M becomes interesting. If a facility was considered important enough to warrant a ballistic missile, such as Iskander-M, that could indicate that the target was viewed as having significant value. But once again, that remains a possibility. It is not a confirmed fact. The size of the explosion is also not enough to identify the missile. A large explosion can come from the warhead itself, but it can also be amplified by materials stored inside the facility, combustible materials, industrial equipment, packaging, fuel, or other materials that trigger secondary explosions. That is why dramatic footage showing a huge fireball cannot, by itself, prove that the weapon was an Iskander-M. To establish that, we would need additional evidence. Missile fragments, official statements, geolocation, before and after satellite imagery, or credible independent OSINT analysis. Until that evidence appears, the safest conclusion is Iskander-M is suspected but not confirmed. And that distinction matters, because military analysis has to separate evidence from speculation. So, what can we actually take away from this incident? First, the reported strike highlights the growing importance of logistics in the Russia-Ukraine war. The battlefield is not just trenches, it is not just tanks, and it is not just the forces fighting on the front line. There is a much larger network behind them: warehouses, transport, distribution, and the infrastructure that keeps the entire system moving. Second, the location matters. Dnipropetrovsk is a major industrial and transport region. If a large distribution center is seriously disrupted, the effects could potentially spread across a wider network. But how significant those effects would be is still too early to determine. We need more information: the exact location, the identity of the facility, its actual function, and evidence showing what weapon was used. Third, there is the Iskander-M question. The possibility is certainly worth examining, but possibility is not proof. Without physical evidence or strong independent analysis, we should not claim that an Iskander-M definitely struck this facility. And perhaps that is the most important point here. In a prolonged war, logistics can be just as important as frontline maneuver. Destroy one vehicle, and one unit may lose mobility, but disrupt a distribution network, and the consequences can spread much further. That is why large warehouses, distribution centers, transport routes, and logistics infrastructure are becoming an increasingly important part of the strategic picture. Now, I want to hear what you think. Do you believe this strike was primarily intended to disrupt Ukraine's wider logistics network? Or could the facility have had a more specific military function? And what about the Iskander-M theory? Is the available evidence enough to support it? Or should we wait for physical evidence before drawing that conclusion? Let's think about it together in the comments. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps the channel continue covering developments like this with more context, evidence, and careful analysis. And one final reminder, this video is based on information available at the time of publication. In an ongoing war, initial reports can change. A claim may later be confirmed, corrected, or even proven wrong. For that reason, the discussion of Iskander-M in this video is presented as an unconfirmed possibility, not an established fact. Stay informed, stay critical, and most importantly, think for yourself.
Ебать, она рычит, пацаны.
Аж за 800 метрів відчувається.